Today on Terrors of Tubi, we are breaking down the Taking of Deborah Logan and how one of our hosts had a hand in ruining its wide release back in 2014. We also talk about why this film is so much better than most found footage movies released in the past, but also ask, does that even matter almost 10 years after its release?
Calling all scream queens, gore hounds, video nasties, and final girls. Turn up the lights and turn on the horror as we explore Tubi's frightening video vaults with the Terrors of Tubi podcast. No one is safe as we hit horror history, commentary, and more with your hosts, the Terror Squad.
Right?
Well, I don't get that.
Well, all of us pulling up the movie to check the first thing.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating, it's only a podcast, only a podcast, only a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Terrors of Tubi. This is your spooky crew, Ryan,
Laura,
and DT.
and we are here to break down another glorious horror movie on Tubi. We are talking about tonight the Taking of Deborah Logan, and this found footage gem might be a little divisive tonight. It sounds like maybe. I don't know. Sounds like people have some opinions.
would we call it glorious? Would we call it a gem?
Oh man, I can't wait to get into it. Okay, so just a note, Joe, who actually recommended this movie, will not be joining us tonight. He might actually have like a quick rebuttal episode or something to follow up on this, and we'll let him, make his arguments whether, how he feels about it. That being said, though, let's get into how we all felt about this movie and kind of break it down. Let's talk about like ratings and like initial sort of reactions.
Right.
Laura, you want to start, or GT, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go for it. Because I know Laura has some opinions to share, so I'll let her go last or next. I didn't mind it. I liked it. I thought the first half of the movie was good. It was interesting. However, when we got into the latter part of it, when we got into the whole, seeing what's going on with Deborah and her whole transformation, I felt like it was just way too shady for me. And some of the time I just kind of came out of it. So if I had to rate it as a individual watch, I would give it a 6.5.
Okay.
We'll give it 6.5. As a group watch, I don't know. Anytime I've watched found footage, the first found footage film that I saw was, I am drawing a blank right now. It was Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch,
which was
same.
which was shot by UCF students, my alma mater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'll probably give it a 7. Usually University of Central Florida, go Knights. Yeah, I would give it a 7. I would give it a 7, a solid 7. Just because my experience with watching found footage films with groups has always been really, really well received.
Is UCF really proud of that? Do they bring those filmmakers back every year to talk about it?
That I don't know, but I know when
Gotcha.
I was in college, that's something that we talked about. I was in a theater program. That's something that we talked about. Yeah, that was definitely something that was huge for the university. And they did it
the
on a
actors
very
go
micro
there
budget.
too?
I don't know.
I was just curious. Josh, I love Josh Leonard, and he's still working, so I think that's great.
I would be really curious, how much of a UC effort it is, a group effort, right?
A
Yeah,
UC
yeah.
effort?
Do they film in Florida? I don't know. I don't really know anything about Black.
I don't think so. I think they filmed in
No?
Yeah, I don't think they did.
Okay. Sorry, back to Deborah Logan. Laura, what do you think? What was your ratings?
Okay. So here's my thing.
Or how do you just feel in general too? You can tell us that.
Well, yeah. Well, I have kind of I'm going to call it a tumultuous relationship with this film. I actually saw it at a test screening, I want to say at least a year before it came out. And after that screening, and I wish I could remember the differences between them, but I honestly can't, because I specifically did not seek it out when it came out, because when I saw it in that test screening, I just felt squicked out by the handling of dementia. And I can totally understand the argument that they try to get to. And I've oscillated on this from viewing to viewing, but the first time I saw it, I was like, 3 of my 4 grandparents had dementia. Both of my parents have been caretakers for elderly folks with Alzheimer's. And I understand that the movie is metaphor for that experience and how horrific it is, but just because you're saying it's not exploitative in the text doesn't mean it isn't exploitative. And like, I don't know, it just so I at first had that sort of initial like blah to it, but then I saw it sometime later, preparing myself to not like it, and then I liked it the next time, and I could really appreciate, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, like Jill Larson and Anne Ramsey, who plays Sarah, are just both so fantastic in it. I feel like their performances are kind of wasted in this movie. I wish it was a better movie for them to be in. And I just, and I was like, okay, this is fine, and I was sort of in that. But then I watched it again this time, and I was expecting like, okay, I think I was like, yeah, it was good-ish. I think I was living kind of where DT is now, like it's fine. But I don't know. I feel like we may at some point want to talk about sort of it makes me want to barf to say historical context of 2014 when it came out, but like where we are when this comes out within the found footage genre, because to me it feels there's not a whole lot that I think is super interesting about it other than the performances of those two leads going into it, and where we get, I just don't find it that special. So I don't know. I want to like it a lot better, but I'm going to say for me, like for an individual watch this time, it was like maybe a 5, but I agree that like, for me, found footage films are often much more successful watching in a group. But even then, I'm gonna give it a 6. I don't know. It's not my favorite, but but it'll be great. It'll be great. We have a lot to talk about. It'll be great, and I understand why people like it, even if I don't. Okay.
Okay, real quick, because I know we all tend to like do research on this stuff. Did you happen to come across the interview with Adam Robitel, the director? And him talking about that test screening that you just talked about? Because that test screening like went down in history for his career. Yes.
Oh my God,
no!
It
was the same one because there was only one test screening ever, and you were at it.
Oh no! Okay, you have to tell me about this.
He blames that test screening for why the movie was dropped on Netflix and not distributed in movie theaters.
That is pretty hilarious.
I take personal responsibility for this. My card was not very nice.
Apparently no one's card was.
And I'm probably violating every NDA ever, but it's fine. Okay, I definitely want to read about this, but okay, now thank you. That just gave me life, and I am standing by my opinions forever. Thank you.
You're welcome. However, he blames a bad sound mix and bad effects at the end for the screening going, bombing. That was his reasoning.
Okay, well, if that helps him sleep at night, that's fine. Okay, that's cool, I guess, for him. Okay, so thank you for that little tidbit. Where are you living?
I would, okay, so it's funny because in my mind, in my memory, I'm like, oh my God, this movie's awesome. And then I sat down to watch it, and it was really hard to get into. And I don't know, maybe there's just a lot going on because, we have a puppy at home, and like Addison had impetigo this weekend, so it's just there's been like a lot going on.
Oh no, I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad.
It's like it's like a skin thing. It's okay. She's fine.
Like
she's like
more
typhoid
the like daycare petri dish. Yeah.
But anyway, I had to like make 2 attempts to watch it for this. Mm-hmm. And then after I watched it, I wasn't really that satisfied. So I had to watch it again. So I don't know. It's kind of tough because I recognize the fact that as a found footage film, it is taking a meteor bite into a story or like adding meat to the story. And it's trying to take sort of a slower approach to than what most found footage films do. Like this is more top tier found footage, I think, than most of the genre. Now, don't get me wrong. There's like some really great ones like Wreck and everything else. And Blair, which is obviously a classic, but it's kind of tough with this one. Here's what I'll say. I'll say as far as like an individual watch goes, for me, it was probably like a 5, but for a group watch, I would say I would probably give it like a 7.5. Yeah, that's what I think.
So here's a question for you gents.
Go for it.
Because we all three sort of like talked about, like the fatigue of it. So this movie comes out in 2014, which I feel like is well past the peak of, at this point we're into, I think, entry 5 or 6 of Paranormal Activity. Like we've gotten all of the sort of like off-brand stuff that's come. So do you think, and I know my own answer, but yours might be different. If this movie had come earlier, let's say it comes out in 2008 instead of 2014, do you, and I know it's hard to talk about it in a vacuum, but do you think you would have responded to it more had we not been so, imbued in this genre for years and years beforehand?
Yeah, I think so. I think the one of the great things about this movie is that it doesn't focus a lot on the camera crew or anything like that, right? Like with a lot of found footage films, they focus a lot on the camera crew, and like you're getting into like personal stories of like the guy behind the camera and blah 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 blah. And it's like, this focuses more on the subject of their documentary, and I think that really works in a strong way. And I think if that had come in 2008, that probably would have like blown my mind at that point. By that time it came out, so much had come through, right? And we were dealing with just like little bits and pieces of found footage by that point. I think I saw like As Above, So Below also came out that year, and that was another found footage.
Which rules, by the way.
Well, like,
I actually really like that one.
Yes, it does. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. Have you seen that one, DT?
No, I have not.
That's a good one.
And it's
check
like
it
kind of mystery too. It's great. As Above, So Below.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
A lot of cool imagery. But yeah, I think so. I think if it had come out earlier, I think it would have been better. DT, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if this came out before all the other found footage, I think it would have played better. So I was reading some of the reviews, and they were saying that like there was really nothing new, and that seems like that there's been a lot of like sort of those mixed reviews. That's kind of been like the consistent one, that like there wasn't nothing new in terms of this particular genre. And like I guess like what really, I think they had moments to really execute on the monster element of it, and I just think it fell flat. So yeah, I think it could have played better, but I think as an overall movie, they could have done a little bit more.
It's tough, right? I have like little things I nitpick with it, but at the same time, like I recognize that like as far as the genre goes, like this is actually a pretty strong entry. As far as possession films go, it doesn't really bring anything new. And as far as possession films go, it's actually quite muted. You know what I mean? Like, sure, a lot's happening to Deborah Logan, but like she's not throwing people across the room, or like things aren't instantaneously like catching fire around her in a room like the typical possession stuff goes. It's muted and controlled, I'm assuming because the budget was so low. But I don't know, they lean into that in a way. I don't know. What do you think, Laura?
They start to lean in it in a way, and like I felt like they were touching on aspects of it, and so for me, I wanted to dive in a little deeper. Yeah. And so that's where I think they missed the mark.
So I very much agree with that, and I think the way that I would come at it is that I think it was ambitious, and it wanted, I think it didn't always know what it wanted to be. I think it tried to do like a lot of things. So at the core of it, this sort of fucked up relationship between the mother and daughter, I think, is strong. The character study of both of them is strong, particularly I think of Sarah. I think that, they sort of have these half-baked attempts at comedy with the film crew that for me don't really work. And there's a couple funny moments, like actually even in the climax when, we'll talk about it later, but like when they're trying to burn the body and it's like, no, you gotta light the thing and whatever, which I wrote in my notes that, I wish that if they were going to do comedy, they would have leaned into that earlier. I think, it's enough of a drama for me at the beginning that I think that could have just been compelling in and of itself, because often I will appreciate when a film takes that time, like Babadook, I think is amazing at that, where it's like a family drama that's got horror in it. And you spend enough time with the family that you really care about them and fear for them when things are happening. But for whatever reason, and maybe it's because mother and daughter have to be performative for the camera from the outset, I just don't know. For me, I don't have that same intimacy, so the stakes aren't the same for me. So I don't have that, but then it also doesn't really lean into the scares, except for in the way that we were talking about Autopsy of Jane Doe. There is something about losing your mind and caring for a parent losing their mind, which is inherently horrific, right? But for me, the jump scares are kind of tired. The creepy elements don't really feel that creepy to me. And the one, I can't decide if I think it's rad or if it is not, is very much not, is like the snake imagery at the end where she's like kind of like eating I don't know. I think it just tried to have its cake and eat it too. And I get that, but I think that because it sort of pursued all of these sort of aspects in a half-baked way, we ended up with something that was had individual good parts, but did not become greater than the sum of its parts.
I love how you phrased that, because there was a lot of good elements to it. I enjoyed the comedic aspect of it. I thoroughly enjoy. Gavin's my favorite character and has one of my favorite moments in horror when he literally says, "Who's getting on the Gavin train? I'm leaving." Like it's like, you know, it was like Gavin was every audience member. What every audience member is thinking in that moment, like, shit is fucked up. She's levitating. We need to get out of here, you know? So, and I love those moments. I even love the moment with, I'm going to say it like this, forgive me for saying it like this, but the brown guy. The brown guy. I love how he played into that. He played into that, you know? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I love those moments. And as far as the creepiness, like, I thought some moments were good. For me, like the snake moment at the end, when they're eating the little kid, that flipped me the freak out.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is for the PG-13
Oh, are we
audience.
supposed to not be swearing?
Oh, you can swear. It's totally fine. It's okay.
I chose not to.
Okay.
You're good.
Oops.
But no, that's a very, very, very good point, Laura. Like, it's like they tried a lot of different things, and from an individual, like, okay, cool, like, this was good, this was funny, oh, this was creepy. But if you had to bring it all together as this cohesive film, it just didn't mesh well. But I still enjoyed it. I did enjoy it for what it's worth.
I love the snake imagery at the end with her eating the kid. Like, I'd never seen anything like that before. I thought that was really awesome. So I will say that. Okay. I will defend that, because that's like my favorite part. When it did hit that part, I was like, oh yes. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's the end of the movie. Okay. Movie's over. But what I will say is, the one thing I did want at the end this time around that I hadn't really thought about last time was the relationship between the mom and the daughter. Yeah. Because the daughter, because she's a lesbian, and there's all that backstory about like the mom sending her away to camp and everything else. Like, there wasn't really, like, I would have liked to hear like, or see some sort of afterthought on their relationship at the end there, but she takes care of her mom the entire way through. Like, there's never a question that, you know, her daughter, Sarah, is like not taking care of her, right? Like, even when the possession thing comes, like Sarah is still going through, and like when they find the body in the attic, she's like, thank you guys for sticking with, you know, for doing this and blah, blah, blah. Let's go burn the body, that sort of thing. And then she gets through it. She saves her mom, and she disappears out of like the epilogue there. And we just go straight to the, you know, the epilogue about the kid. But I would have liked to see something there to sort of like, I don't know, give me like a little cap on it, because throughout the whole movie too, you have the mom still kind of shitting on her too. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, yes, she's possessed, but at the same time, it's like, remember when she's like, clean your hands? She's like, my daughter doesn't do manicures. Her fingers are always dirty.
It's handled in this very specific way of, the nitpicky way that relationships can exist between mothers and daughters, and the fact that she is a lesbian and not a femme lesbian is obviously a source of tension, you know, given that you know, her mother's always in these jewel tones and florals and like immaculately kept. So like we have those big visual cues, but Deborah strikes me as the kind of person who, even if Sarah hadn't been gay, would have found other things to nitpick about her, like if she had been overweight, or like, you know, if she found her ugly, you know, whatever. But Sarah's queer identity is really, really interesting to me. And I wish that I could sort of pick up this relationship that we have in this movie and transplant it into a different film, because like it's one that's almost defined by absence. You know, I think Sarah is somebody who is going to spend her entire life, even as her mother loses herself in trying to get approval that she'll never get. There's also this lack of, she's going through all of this alone. She has a partner. She's got a girlfriend named Shelley who lives not too far away in Richmond, who the mother's aware of, but has specifically been tabled, like, I cannot have you be part of this home life, so she's isolated. This part of her has been very fragmented and compartmentalized, but at the same time, and it's hard because, it's just been the two of them her entire life. So her mom is her world and she's been rejected by her, but now is trapped in having to care for her. I think that you are so right, Ryan. I'm just sort of like talking in a circle right now, but all of that to say that for me,
I mean, that's how I feel too.
But for me, that narrative, like that relationship and the horror at the center of that relationship is, I mean, that's ostensibly what the documentary is about, but then it's also what the movie's about. So to give us this kind of like trite, sort of predictable, like creepy kid stinger of like, dun dun, I'm gonna smile at the camera knowingly and like the evil, no, come on. That's not what I want from what you spent this past, 90 minutes building this relationship. And you have these.
It was way too cheesy.
And you have these amazing actors in Jill Larson and Anne Ramsey. Anne Ramsey, I think, could do this in like the Oscar bait version of this movie, right? Of like the lesbian caregiver daughter. And Jill Larson gives an incredible physical performance. Everything she's doing with her voice, everything, the way she carries herself when she's possessed. It's all awesome. But I just think they are not serviced by the film in which they find themselves.
And Jill Larson, I mean, my God, I don't know if you looked into like her and like any interviews she did on this movie. She apparently had never seen a horror movie up to this point being cast in this movie.
What?
Yeah. She said a few days into production after filming one day, she decided to actually break down and watch one. She said she started up Rosemary's Baby, got half an hour into it, and then just dropped it because she couldn't watch any more of it. That's pretty cool.
That is
pretty
cool.
Awesome.
And she just, okay, it makes sense to me given... So I think this is counterintuitive. DT, I think you'll also hopefully, I think, agree with this. But like, so Jill Larson, from what I saw, comes from a soap background. And people tend to be...
children.
And lay people tend to be very dismissive of soap actors, but they should have the utmost respect for soap actors because they are machines. They are turning out ridiculous amount of pages a day. They're having to like deal with rewrites on the fly in ways that like no other kind of production does. They have to be precise. They have to be prepared. They have to be coming in with choices. And I think that you can definitely see if this was a totally novel experience for her to be like, look, I'm coming in with this arsenal of stuff. I'm coming in prepared. I'm going to just, throw things at the wall and see what sticks. But like that fearlessness, I think, translates it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Underrated, respect soap actors. I wonder if she was like a dancer or something too, just because like she has such control over her physicality. I have to think she has some kind of like gymnastics or dance or some kind of background like that. I should do some digging. I don't know, but
she most definitely embodied that character very well. The piano scene that was one of the moments that was very, very creepy for me.
Agreed. That worked for me.
Yeah, the piano scene.
Let me try to do the log line. Jump in if I'm wrong here. A group of medical students try to film a documentary about a patient with Alzheimer's, but soon find that their subject is also possessed by the soul of not a serial killer. I mean, guess a serial killer, right? He killed 4 kids. So possessed by a serial killer? by the
do I have to
soon find their subject possessed by the angry spirit of a child killer? Angry spirit
who she killed herself. Spoilers. But like she killed that, but like, yeah, possessed by the angry spirit of a murderer who
a murdered
okay,
child
this is
killer?
going to be inelegant, but like, but possessed by the spirit of a child killer who, because of the patient, has unfinished business from when they were alive.
Dun, dun, dun.
The movie has too many threads. There are too many things going on.
Yes.
So, all right. What's up with all these white people in their attic? That's what I'm
It was
trying
like
to find out.
attic on attic. Oh, that is a complaint I have actually. Is did you guys? Okay, so I have no spatial relation, so I just have to check with people whose brains work in the proper way. Did you both have a sense of the geography of the house? Because I feel like that's so important. Okay, great. I had no idea where things were.
No idea. I had no idea.
Guys, it's a found footage film. What do you want?
Ryan?
You want to try a quick breakdown, maybe?
Yeah, I can try, just so I would maybe say something like, medical student Mia has gotten together a film crew. She, for her thesis film, has decided that she wants to do a film about how not only Alzheimer's takes a toll on the patient, but as well as a physiological toll on the primary caregiver. So she has put out flyers to see if folks will participate, and her ad is answered by a woman named Anne, who is the primary, named Sarah, played by Anne Ramsey, who's the primary caregiver for her mother, Deborah, in rural Virginia. And we come to find that the reason that they're participating is because they are in desperate need for the money. Otherwise, they will lose the house. So there is a sort of tenuous relationship as Deborah is unsure that she wants to participate, but her daughter convinces her to go along with it. At first, the film crew is seeing relatively normal manifestations of the disease, moments of confusion or memory loss. But as they spend longer with Deborah and her daughter, the more that the film crew sees that there is probably more to the eye with what's happening with Deborah, and it may not be limited to a neurodegenerative disease. Her daughter, Sarah, and the film crew come to believe that Deborah is experiencing, she's in the throes of possession, and they come to find that she is possessed by the angry spirit of a man named Henri Desjardins, who was a pediatrician and had murdered 4 pubescent girls in this rite honoring like a serpent god that's supposed to give him immortal life. He had planned to make Deborah's daughter the 5th, and so Deborah murdered him and buried him in the backyard, which he did not like. And so now that she has begun to lose her mind to Alzheimer's, this spirit has come to possess Deborah and try to finish what he started. And to that end, when Deborah is hospitalized, Desjardins, while he is possessing her, abducts a little girl who is a cancer patient and takes her into the mountains, into a mine. And the film crew pursue with the sheriff into the mountains. The sheriff dies in the pursuit. At this point, Deborah is completely taken over by Desjardins. She unhinges her jaw and tries to eat the girl like a snake, and it's very scary. And her daughter has to shoot her to try to make it stop. It appears as though Deborah is incapacitated and they can burn the body, which is supposed to subdue the spirit. And we find out afterwards through news clips that Deborah has been found mentally unfit to stand trial. We don't know where Sarah fits into that ending for Deborah. And meanwhile, we also go to the birthday party of the little girl, Kara, who got abducted. And it's a miracle because she has been cured of her cancer. And the reporter asks her, what does she want to do? And she's like, it's a secret, and smiles creepily at the camera, implying that Desjardins has in fact been successful, possesses the little cancer girl, and then it's over.
Yeah! Man, off the cuff. That was fantastic. Go, Laura, go.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, guys. That's thank you.
Laura, do the rewrite.
Please, for the
take
love
the story,
of God.
do the rewrite.
Right?
Let's do the rewrite.
I also
Mike,
want to make the argument that,
yes.
like, well, it's his first film and yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, like, you know, he's got Bryan Singer producing on it. You've got Millennium Entertainment distributing it. I mean, and I've heard, and I couldn't find a budget, but he made a comment where it was like, you know, with a budget that's under $5 million, you have to focus on performance. And I'm like, a budget under $5 million, buddy, we're talking about millions of dollars as far as your budget goes for a found footage film. Like,
Get over yourself.
you know, I can't give him too many excuses. You know what I mean? I just
No.
can't.
Yeah.
So it's a tough one to be like, oh, okay. Well, his first attempt doing
did he
everything.
also write
really
it?
wasn't. I don't know. He did. He co-wrote with his friend Gavin Heffernan, and they've worked on a bunch of stuff. So they went on to like Escape Room after this, and they did one of the Insidious. They did one of the Insidious movies.
Insidious, yes.
3, I think it was.
But like, okay, so again, I didn't get to do the kind of like exhaustive research I like to do before these, but I just think it's
because you were dancing around in
yes,
Iceland.
yes, I was flicking with the trolls and elves, but yes. So when I came back, thank you. When I came back to Earth, I had not done the reading, but so I don't know. It just seems this is a script that. But they wrote it too. I don't know. It just, why choose to do a story about a relationship between a mother and a daughter, about a gay woman, about a female documentarian? Like, I don't know. It seems like a really weird choice of a story for them to try to tell. I don't know if it would have been more successful in different hands, but I'm just like, I have a lot of questions. Was he a caregiver? I don't know. These are deeply personal things to be taking on. Yeah. Like when this isn't your lived experience. I don't know.
I have a slight answer for that.
Ooh, yes.
But DT, you want to go?
No, I was just going to echo what Laura was saying earlier, that like there was a lot of things going on and there was a lot of moments, but it's just all didn't they didn't bring it together. Like it's like they dove into these different like subplots, right? Because then she started talking to her partner. Right. And I wanted to know more about that. But that was just like, you know, one scene. So for me, it was just like there were so many opportunities to dive deep within this story, but they couldn't because they had so many things they were trying to do.
Yeah. So the backstory behind that is he was trying to make his break. Right. So he was like PAing for Bryan Singer's company. I think it was like Bad Hat or something like that. Yeah, I know. It was taking him a really long time. And he was doing behind the scenes featurettes on movies. So while he was basically like filming and editing these, he was trying to come up with a story, and he pitched the group at Singer's company this idea of Alzheimer's. And what he said he had an uncle when he was younger. He had an uncle who had it, and he remembers seeing that uncle in the hospital with just like this dead look in his eyes, like nothing was there. And then eventually that uncle ended up just like walking out of a window and falling a couple stories and dying, basically. Now, that is a very personal, connective story. But what's funny is, and I watched a couple interviews of him, he always then goes immediately into a Dateline interview he saw on TV. He goes, and then I saw this Dateline interview with this woman who had Alzheimer's, and they were filming her for a year, and she's talking about how hard it was going to be. And then they jumped in time to another year, and she's sitting in front of the camera in this adult high chair, and she doesn't remember anything. And I just thought that was the scariest thing ever. And I knew I had to write about that. And I was like, oh, okay. So was the uncle the inspiration, or was it more just like you saw an hour of Dateline and you know, or 60 Minutes. Sorry, excuse me, 60 Minutes. And you just thought that would be a good idea. So
he says that's the scariest thing that he can imagine. And I agree. I think that's terrifying. Yeah. But to me, it's a very weird impulse to me if you're watching somebody who has been robbed of their dignity in that way, and you're like, I need to tell a story about how scary that is, as opposed to like respecting this is a human being who is no longer, you know, in control of their faculty. I don't know. I just have a very different relationship with it, I guess. But like, I just think at the core, I cannot get behind that because it's scary, but not in like a, I don't know. It's still people, and for me, it's different. Like, you know, the other week we were talking about the horror in real life autopsies and like looking at bodies and things, and like, yes, you're remembering humanity in a way then, but those people are now meat. You know, they're people, but like it's not. So Mary Roach is an author who has a book called Stiff about, and I think the subtitle is like The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. And in the beginning, she has this quote. It's really good. So I'm gonna like paraphrase it, but just basically that like, death is funny, dying is not funny. You know, so like in death, you know, bodies are kind of ridiculous, whatever, but like the process of dying is tragic, and, you know, all these things. And so for me, I think that's kind of where the line is of like it being crass for me. I can totally understand other people having a different take on it, but for me, like, I'm okay with getting into the grotesque when there's like, I guess, a step of removal, but just it's the lack of dignity for me that's really, really difficult in seeing Alzheimer's as like a boogeyman. Like that montage that they have, I really hope that those are actors and not from, you know, actual folks who are suffering from it, because like those quick takes in the hospital and like the one person they have who is just like completely inert, I'm like, oh my God, please tell me that this is not an actual person who was going through this, because if I'm in that place, I do not want to be a prop in a spooky movie. Yeah. Like, you know, I don't know. That
would be the one shot that person, that woman laying there. I thought that was probably added by the movie, but I couldn't tell about the other ones. I was like, I don't know if those are like just taken off of video stock website or something like that. But I guess it's 2014.
Yeah, and even then, I don't know. That's quick. It squicks me out. Yeah, I don't know. But I do think, and I'm just, unless you guys have responses to that or different takes on it, I have something else that I totally want to pivot to, but it's a total non sequitur. So
to put a cap on that, I guess what I will say is like, I don't have anyone within my family who went through that or is going through that. And so I think that's also part of the problem for me, is like, I don't have anything to like bounce that off of. So it didn't bother me as much, but when you have a personal relationship with it, I understand that's tougher. That's a tougher thing to sit through for sure. And that makes sense. Like, why you would look at it and go, okay, well, this is a bit exploitive. And he has talked about that too, where it's like, he's talked about the exploitation of the disease and how he was trying to ride a fine line, but it sounds like maybe he was only trying to ride the line once he got really bad reviews in the test screening.
That's it. So for me, and to echo what you were saying, Ryan, I'm in the same camp. I never experienced that, and I know it's a horrific thing. And so for me, I thought throughout the script they try in areas to make it not, you know, be as exploitive. But now hearing it out, like the interviews and kind of his inspiration, now I'm kind of starting to question that, because like even when Mia, even when Mia like gets there, right? Like, you know, and Deborah says like, hey, is this going to be, you know, I don't want to be a butt of anybody's joke. And like, she has her second thoughts, and then Mia tries to reassure her like, hey, like we're going to do this with dignity and things like that. I thought that was the director's way of saying like, hey, we want to approach this in a, you know, we want to approach this with dignity. And you kind of see that throughout, like with Mia's character, right? She lied to Sarah about her grandfather having the same thing. But at the end, she tries to like, you know, say, you know, in the most horrific moment, say like, oh, my grandfather never had it. It's just like, I don't give a fuck. Let's just go. Right. So I thought that was director's way, like using Mia as a way to say like, hey, like, you know, I know this is just a project for me and my film crew just skedaddled, but I want to be with you the whole time because I'm here with you in this like horrific event. So, but like now knowing and hearing what you're saying, Laura, I'm kind of like, maybe, well, I don't know.
And to piggyback off of what you're saying, and like you pointed to exactly a moment that I would have pointed to as well, where to me, the movie is doing the same thing that Mia does, where she pays lip service to no, we don't want
Yeah.
this to be exploitative. It's supposed to be sympathetic and informative. But then she immediately undercuts it, right? By like being like, yes, my grandfather, and be like, no, that was total bullshit. And like, for me, that makes me lose all sympathy for her. And I love Michelle Ong. I think she's great in other stuff, but it makes me immediately hate Mia. And to me, that's sort of the flavor that the film takes about it, where it tries to say like, oh no, we're gonna and we're not actually dealing with the disease, right? It's a possession movie, so it's not actually even. I've seen that argument before, which I'm sorry, I also think that's bullshit. But for me, I think the film pays. I'm just coming to this as we're talking about it. I think it pays lip service to what it thinks it should be doing, and then absolutely does not do that.
No, that's a valid point. No,
That's
for sure.
a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
The end.
To counter that, what I will say is it's kind of amazing that we get to have this conversation about this, especially a found footage film doing this, because if
Yes.
think about all the found footage films to come before this or even after this, like there are a shit ton of really bad found footage films.
And it's interesting to me because where this film fails for me in the sensitivity with the Alzheimer's plot, it handles Sarah's queerness to me in a much more sensitive, nuanced way. I like that it is, yes, part of her identity. It is not the defining factor, right? That she's the daughter first, but that, we've already traced kind of how it ties into the plot and her character and her relationship with her mom. But then also in a different movie, there are things to glom onto, like with the specific type of possession, and that these girls are taken at puberty and that it's a death sentence, like the becoming sexually mature. And like, so, okay, as she's coming into her queerness, that is a death sentence for her relationship with her mother, yada, yada, yada. A lot of that I think is quite sophisticated.
Yeah.
I know I just,
Right.
it was like yada, yada. But like, I think that there is some really interesting stuff to unpack there and to be explored, again, maybe by a different filmmaker for whom those themes are actually like relevant to their lives. But I don't know. I think it's one of those for me that is frustrating. So, in the vacuum of just that subplot with the mother and daughter and Sarah's queerness, I think there's a lot of really good ideas that, again, I just want to transplant out because I think it just gets muddy. I'm already turned off with the way that the disease is handled. Like I would be totally down to watch a different, like, even if it's not a possession film, like a cult film or whatever, with these same rights, this same mother-daughter relationship, and sort of using the rituals as metaphor. I'm totally into that. I just don't think it worked here for me.
I'd be curious to see, because the other thing too I'd be interested in is, since there are two writers on this, I'd be curious to see a draft of like what they sort of like wrote and finished and then turned into, Bryan Singer or Millennium Entertainment, like whoever they turned it over to. Because the other thing this film does have a lot of is like, it does feel like a sort of like a typical horror movie, sort of like beat path in a way, with the exception of like trying to build a backstory in the beginning, take it slow. But there is still like things where it's like, they have to look into the history, right? And they got to figure out like what's going on with this thing, why are these hauntings happening? And that's really like, I feel like at that point, that's really where it takes off. And it's like, okay, bye Alzheimer's, here's demonic possession, and doesn't even like look back. It just keeps plowing forward, right? And I think I'd be curious to know like what were the notes they received, and like also then after that test screening too, like what edits were they forced to make as well? You know what I mean? Because you're right, there's like a lot of interesting threads set up. Well, I'd be really curious too. There are these really nice little sprinkles. Like,
right. I liked and thought it was clever the fact that Desjardins, the murderer, had Lou Gehrig's disease, because it's sort of the opposite of Alzheimer's, right? Where like first you lose control over your body and then it's your mind that goes. Like, so I thought like that's really interesting. The fact that like, they allude to perhaps Sarah having a romantic past with the sheriff, I thought was really interesting. Like there's there's little nuances that really, really work. So I don't know if somebody did, like, maybe this was all like remnants of a really great first draft that got ruined by a studio, which happens, or if like they had someone come in and like polish, but only parts of it got kept. I don't know. It feels very patchwork to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it definitely feels sort of like two halves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it really is like, here's the sort of like fake documentary side, and then here's the demonic possession side, really. Do you remember the ending in your screening? Did you like the shot of her as the snake woman? Do you remember that shot at all?
I feel like if I say yes, I may just be like conjuring a false memory. I don't remember being particularly blown away by anything at the end, nor do I remember it being like laughably terrible, but I think I was so checked out by that point that like I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Because he said there was an initial version where they actually went practical, but it looked too much of like a shark head on the woman like swallowing the child, and so they went back and like did the digital effects to make her look more like a serpent swallowing.
That could be. Yeah, I don't remember. How'd you do with the snakes, by the way? I know those are not your favorite.
Okay, so this is like totally unrelated to this podcast, but since I am moving across the country, I have joined a few like online snake communities. And so I've been reading up a lot about snakes and these people posting snakes every day and talking about them, discussing them and pointing things out. I'm actually becoming more comfortable with the sight of them and like working out whatever things I have going on. And so I was like,
That's
wait,
great.
are those just like all like black racers running around? You know what I mean? Like I was like trying to identify the snakes running around rather than like actually like getting creeped out. So I was having kind of fun there.
Oh, maybe you're gonna have a second career as a herpetologist.
I know, right?
No? Okay, so the question I was going to pose to you both, we sort of already talked about if we think that the movie would have worked better for us if it had come out earlier. If it had been made, if this core story was kept, but it was not if it was not done in the found footage style, if it was done in a more traditional narrative style, do you think you would have liked it better? Do you think it wouldn't work without the documentary piece? I don't know. Do you think that's intrinsically linked to the style?
Go ahead, DT. I haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, I think it could have worked both ways. I guess which one is more interesting? I mean, yeah, I think, the choice of going found footage, yeah, it seemed more interesting. But in terms of story, I just would have liked them to expand on a lot of different things. And I don't know if you can necessarily do that with found footage. And also just with the end, the last act, it's just like, it was way too shaky for me. That it was just like, I missed a lot. It was just like literally a roller coaster, which I get. That's the effect of it. But then again, it's just like, it did not deliver what I wanted at the end, with the exception of seeing the snake devour the kid. But other than that, it's just like everything leading into that, I didn't know what was going on.
And I think that's them hiding the budget, like them trying to have like a big explosive ending and like not having the money to back up the shaky cam and like the weird cuts. And I do think that's like them trying to be creative in the edit, because I think possibly initially they did show too much, and I think then the note was cut this out.
Yeah,
show us highlights, let the audience imagine what's going on, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but like you're seeing things, but then again you're not seeing them. It just looks like it looked like a botched job.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then to follow up to Laura's question, I would love to see this filmed in like sort of a classic format. I really would. I think the way the setup of the film is, to go through that setup as like a found footage film is tough, because it's like in an initial watch, if you were to go through a found footage film with that sort of setup, it's tough initially to like sit through and go, okay, I hope this is going somewhere, because I don't know, this is just, there's a lot, it's very slow burn in the beginning and there's a lot of shaky footage and you're just like, I hope they know what they're doing. Whereas like if this had been filmed, in a simple, like, throw that camera on some sticks, maybe you throw in a dolly shot every now and then, like I would feel like I'm being more guided into a general, path. And so I would put more trust in the film, I think, too. You know what I mean? To like let it earn its thing and like, I know I'm being led somewhere.
You know how last week, or whenever we did that, not last week, last episode, but how in Jane Doe, I certainly, but I think everybody was kind of salivating over that elevator scene between Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch, you know, when it's like a stage play and they just get to do it. I think you could have had that with Jill Larson and Anne Ramsey, just like throw a camera on them, let them do their thing. You know, with the director talking about like, you need to fall back on those performances. That I think is the movie I want to see, which, you know, I try to judge a movie based on what we get, not what I wanted to get. But I do wish that there was some, you know, multiverse in which I could take a peek and see what that film looks like.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very jumpy. So that was the other part of it too. It's like, as a found footage film, you know, it's so jumpy and it's at it. In my head, I'm just watching and going, okay, so they shot this scene how many different times and then just cut different takes together so that it all like, you know, because it doesn't match up. It doesn't really work when like that happens. And so it takes me out a little bit more because I'm analyzing like, oh, do we think this is part of that same take back there? Or do we think, you know, this is like take number 3 or 6 or whatever. And so it doesn't really match and it kind of takes me out of it. But as far as like, you know, letting them go, you're right. They had like that one scene in the house where she was convincing her mom that she needed to do the documentary for the money. And it's just that long shot through the window. And so every time they do like a long shot through the window, they seem to have like long takes, right? Like the other one was Sarah talking to the sheriff, right? When the sheriff shows up. And that's another long take through the window and they're just kind of sitting on them. There's no cutting there. I don't know. It's curious. You're right. It would be nice to see like if a little bit more of just letting the actors go instead of like the jumpy cutting between whatever take, you know, gets the best performance.
And, you know, I've been riding this creative team very hard, but just as a positive that I would want to bring in as well, if this is like a traditional film, I love, and we started talking about it a little bit earlier, but the scene at the sink where Mia is washing Deborah's hands, you know, and Deborah has these snide comments about Sarah. I thought that was a lovely shot. I loved that. I just thought that was a really interesting creative choice. And I wonder if perhaps if this had been done in a more traditional narrative format, if they may have had the freedom to find more cool moments like that. That don't really make as much sense necessarily in like a found footage, but you would give that latitude in you know, something like Stoker or whatever, where it can be a little more artistic.
Yeah. But I mean, Jill Larson is just, I mean, if you see this movie, the reason to see this movie is for Jill Larson's performance, I think, honestly, because she just like, she is so on point in every scene that she's in. And it even, you can even feel it too. Like when she's like tied up in the hospital and then they go run to go find his body and everything else, you can just feel the difference in the movie, the way it kind of shifts, right? Because like she's so subtle in her stuff and then she kind of like, she can explode, but you always like, you always feel the simmer and you're always kind of worried about like what she's going to do when she's on the screen. And then they go to the investigation part where they're running around trying to dig up the guy, and it just feels like it's forced. It feels like, okay, we got to up the ante now, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel honest in a way. Whereas like Jill feels like she's coming from an honest place. Even
though this is like a very physical performance that she has to do, it's actually very grounded, and there are certain facial expressions, certain moments, like for example, you know, when they're packing up Deborah's Hummels, like the little figurines, because I think she's been trying to swallow them. Jill Larson just has this gorgeous facial expression of just like knowing that this is humiliating, but just trying to stay composed for the camera. And, you know, there's those moments. There are the moments where she has the denial of like, oh, it's just a senior moment. I'm just whatever. Like some of those I have seen in life with loved ones who have been going through dementia, and I would have visceral reactions. It would make my stomach drop, but in a good way, because it felt real and recognizable. And I think that's actually part of the reason, like, I have trouble with the film, is that she does a really remarkable job. And I think, again, if this was like the drama version, it would be a really compelling, truthful performance.
So this is a question for the group. So I understand that they obviously buried this guy alive. But when did she have time to dig up the body? Because that was one of the points in the movie that I'm just like, They're looking for the body. They're digging it up, and all of a sudden they like randomly find it in the attic.
Great
Like there was
question.
like a water, like
Great
that.
question.
Like I'm like, did I miss something here?
I mean, that's the other thing of it. It's like it jumps around so much that it's just like they're hoping the audience just kind of puts it wherever they want it. You know what I mean? Like that's one of the things.
Yeah, my understanding was like she hadn't sold the house and had stayed because he had been buried in the garden that whole time, and then like one of the evenings when she has snuck outside is when it happens. But again, to your point of like they've got like 3 fucking attics. How is she moving around? But she can teleport apparently, which we see on a camera, and then doesn't really like come to anything or go anywhere. But like, I guess so. If she has teleportation abilities and she can like bounce around and do whatever she's doing, that might help. But like, I think Desjardins has been in the garden for like 30 or 40 years or whatever, and has only recently been moved to the attic.
And that's another thing where I'm trying to figure out like the timeline of when he actually possessed and when this possession actually happened, because she's painting the pictures, right, and you're seeing this black entity through the picture getting closer.
Right. It's that time when the window blows open. No,
maybe, because
it's like closed and then it's open, and then I think then she's like, bam, bam.
But then what about
I feel like it happened before. I think it.
That's a really good question as far as like when this happened, because I was gonna say there's a scene. Remember it's like the first jump scare in the scene in the movie where they're filming. Lewis is filming her from behind, and she's gardening, and she picks up the snake, and it looks like she's about to give the snake a kiss.
Yes.
And then Maya comes up behind him, like, "What are you doing? Why are you fucking around?" And then he immediately spins back and she's like, "I'm hungry. Let's go have lunch." That's like the jump scare, and so it's like
I think that's exactly
possession. But like that's like
I
early
think so
days in the
too.
movie.
No, you're right, and now I've changed my mind. I think that's right because when like not too long after that, she comes in, she's like, "You took it, you fucker, where's my spade?" And then she like, stabs herself in the throat. That's definitely the spirit being like, "Bitch, you did this to me, I'm gonna tap you back." So yes, my answer's changing. It's when she's digging in the garden where Ryan said, but I wonder if she is fighting back before then, because they keep saying over and over, right? She's stubborn. She's not going to go down without a fight. She's a fighter. Like, so maybe there's like a back and forth, and like they're playing with that, with the moments of lucidity, right?
Well, I just want to piggyback off of that. Well, so my impression was that the possession happened before the film even started, because the thing is, to your point, Ryan, with that first scene with the jump scare, it seemed like she was already possessed.
Right.
But obviously they were, kind of not revealing the whole thing right away. But then you started kind of seeing that through her actions, and then through the pictures, and then the window, the levitation, and all that. That's when, like something's obviously going on here, other than Alzheimer's.
But then she does have moments of lucidity, right? Because with Harris, I feel like her and Harris are like, they maybe have been fighting this spirit or something, right?
Well, for a while, It's been like,
And there's that whole thing about like the documentarian talks about like for the ritual, it's, the elderly, the young, and the infirm who are vulnerable, so that perhaps the spirit, and again, I'm just speculating because as far as I know, we don't really get like a concrete answer on this, but like has been attempting to possess her to finish his stuff, but it's only now that she has started to succumb to this disease that he's been able to kind of wiggle up in there.
Oh. Yeah. I can buy that.
Maybe.
Does it date it? Does it being a found footage film? Does this date this movie? Is that part of like?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you think so? Yeah, I guess you're right.
For me, yes.
It's almost like disposable in a way. I don't know. It's weird. It's I don't know. That's interesting to go back to found footage films now and just be like, oh yeah.
Yes, because there was definitely I feel like when they first became popular, and, so Blair Witch was way ahead of its time, as we know. That's like 97 or 98. Right. But then we sort of have a renaissance with Paranormal Activity, which the first one is 2007, 2008, something like that.
I think you're right. 2007.
Is it early?
I think so.
We're at this like this film to me comes at this very strange time where when this resurgence was first happening to get attention, like it had to be good, right, and different, because otherwise people are like, why am I going to go see like security footage for 2 hours? Who cares? And then now when we get it, because that market's been so saturated, it's got to be something interesting or different, right, for it to be successful. I think about what is that movie this year? It was like Skinamarink, but then the other one, Outwaters. So something like Outwaters, where it is still found footage, but like has to do something very different to stay part of the consciousness. Whereas this film sort of hits right in the middle, where people will see it because, you know, okay, that's what we're trained to watch right now, but you could be kind of lazy with it almost, because you're like, here are tropes that the viewer expects to see, and these are things that they're cued to look for, and like, oh, we're gonna have like something spooky jump on this camera, and blah, 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 you know, that like they were sort of, I feel like found footage of this time by and large were sort of riding on the coattails of what had come before.
So then do you think, stepping back a few years, what about like the emergence of, like those, the sort of like laptop movies or the desktop movies where it's like Searching or Host or Unfriended? Like, where do you think that's going to go? Do you think we'll look back in a few years and be like, oh yeah, this shit's old. This shit does not hit the way it hit when it came out? I
have an answer, but I want DT to have a chance.
I would love to hear what you have to say about that, Laura.
Well, that's he says, biting back an aneurysm.
Because I will say right off the bat, before you comment, Laura, I will say I love those type of movies. Like I so far, the ones I have experienced have been, I think, really well done. Okay, I'm done. Now you go ahead and say your piece.
So that's what I was gonna say. I agree, Ryan. I love this genre. I still think it's fresh. I still think it's interesting. I think it allows for a lot of creativity. It does already date itself in that the technology from even the first Unfriended is now outdated. But for me, it's more like, oh, that just puts it in a specific time period, like within the diegesis of the film, versus like, oh my God, I'm so over this genre. And granted, I just don't think there's been quite the saturation of those. Like I can think of, Unfriended, Host, We're All Going to the World's Fair, but I just don't think that they've come by the truckload in the way that more traditional found footage has. So to me, there's still a novelty in playing with the medium with those that for me just protects it and insulates it a little bit more from the disdain that I have for the oversaturation of found footage films that we've gotten for a while.
That's a really good point. You're right. The market has not become saturated with those types of films at all.
I never really got into those films.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Okay,
what is it about them?
A couple different reasons. One, never had the opportunity. Two, never really appealed to me. But I can appreciate it from just like, hey, it's like part of a subgenre of this whole thing. And like, I can appreciate it from that point. But just it never did it for me.
Did you see the movie Host?
I did not. No.
Host is sitting on Rotten Tomatoes at a 99%.
Really?
It's good.
With 98 reviews in. So, if you were thinking about one movie you might want to check out.
And
just maybe.
The Host is not.
I've seen like during the pandemic. Well, like I'm so sorry, Laura. I'm so sorry to cut you off, but during the pandemic, I saw a lot of these types of films. I saw a lot of these types of films, and so maybe like because everyone had to get very creative, right? Because they couldn't go out during the pandemic. But so like it's just I was like, okay, I can appreciate it, but I'm ready to move on. So maybe I can give it another try. I'll check out Host. Maybe I can change my mind, but. Watching a lot of shorts on like Vimeo with this type of genre, it just kind of gotta. But I'll give Host a shot.
Yes,
I will give Host a shot.
First of all, I'm going to say nobody is ever cutting me off because if someone is talking in continuous monologue, you're not cutting them off. You're just trying to get a word in edgewise, right? So that's fine. Second of all, I think The Host is a great one of that genre to point to, because something that I don't find it tedious, but I could see someone finding it tedious, is that watching those types of films sometimes feels like watching a film with subtitles, like a foreign film, because you have to pay hyper close attention to what's happening.
Yeah.
If you are like scrolling on your phone or whatever, you might miss like, oh, this is the file they're looking at. This is the thing that's getting opened. It demands more attention than sometimes I feel like giving to a movie. So I hear you on that. But the host, given because it's just like a Skype call or Zoom call or whatever, it doesn't really run into that as much. And like the practical effects they do are just like beautiful. But I do understand why you might be like, yeah, no, I'm kind of blah. Like if it feels like it breaks the immersion a little bit, if like that's what people had to do.
No, I got you. So let me kind of go through it. So I saw a lot of shorts on Vimeo of this particular genre and style. So I got kind of like, I don't know, I'm just like, all right, I'm kind of sick of this. And also during the pandemic, it was just kind of one of those things. Everybody was just going through just a lot of different shit. And so I'm just like, I'm ready to see stuff that like people are actually interacting with each other in the same room. Like things are going on. I want to see people getting stabbed. Like, so that was kind of, so like the thing is like, let me say this. I'm not speaking as a genre where I'm like, oh, this genre sucks or anything like that. It's just like, I just don't have a lot of experience seeing some of like the main movies within that genre.
Maybe
this
Searching
may also be
would
a
be good for
snapshot
him.
in time. Oh, Searching is good.
Searching?
Yeah, but again,
right, I gotta write all these down, right? I have homework.
Searching is less horror and more, I feel like, I was just going to say Searching, I think, is less horror and more like thriller mystery, which I like it a lot. But I also just, hold space for the fact that like it could also be that this snapshot in time as we're still in a pandemic, but as we have had that isolation and like having fatigue from that and not necessarily wanting that in your entertainment, I totally hear where you're coming from with that. So if you need to shelve that for a while and circle back when you're sick of humans again, power to you.
No. No, so I'm going to watch it. This is my homework assignment. And hopefully we will have a Terror of Tubi of this particular subgenre.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So I'd be down for it. I'm going to give it a shot. I may end up loving it. And if I don't, then you're going to hear about it. And I apologize to all of you.
Unfriended 2, Dark Web is the best.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Unfriended.
Are these movies on Tubi?
Maybe.
I have one question for the group. What do we think about the poster and the title?
Okay. So I like the poster and the title. I think
I loved it. Yeah, I love it. Love it.
I would say in comparison to everything else on Tubi, this pops. It pops out 100%. From everything around it. It's very, the lighter tones are nice. The close up of her face, just looking creepy with a snake around her neck, looks really good. There's a lot of, not so great imagery on Tubi. And I think this is definitely one of the better ones. It definitely stands out from the crowd for sure.
But I also love the title.
Jill Larson
because,
rules.
Yeah, she's amazing. I love the name of the title because it doesn't like necessarily, I guess it does imply possession, but it's not so on the head where it's kind of leaves that like ambiguity of like what's actually happening. Like for me, I didn't know it was a possession film. Like I thought like the thing is, I think the I guess her portrait kind of gives it away but I thought it was something where it was like when I saw the Taking of Deborah Logan, I thought this film was going to be based on a true story and it was about a kidnapping. So you had like this. Yeah, so that's what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Until I started watching it and I realized, like, oh, this is going to be a possession film. So the title for me did not necessarily give off like this was a possession film, which I like that it didn't give away everything in the beginning with the title.
I was going to say, there are so many possession films in the found footage genre that I feel like it's good. It's like, it's misleading, but like, I also feel like it's them trying as hard as they possibly can not to give away this is another possession film, right? It's like the Taking of Deborah Logan is such like a big step trying to say, hey, we're another found footage film that's about possession, but we're not about that. We want to surprise you with it. And so it's like, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I could be wrong with that.
No, I think that's fair.
And I love this title too, and which makes for me the content of the film disappointing, because for me it's working on the two levels of possession and Alzheimer's. Like the Taking of Deborah Logan, yes, in the possession she loses herself, but like in dementia, loved ones talk about the patient being taken away from them and that they lose themselves and their personality. So like as the disease is progressing, it's the taking that she's taken away by the disease. And so given that it works that way and that there's been, I assume that is part of the reason that it was chosen, that I wish that the rest of the theme had been treated with the same nuance and consideration. But the title itself, I think, works incredibly well. And Deborah Logan is just a good name.
Yeah. All right, I have one last question. So for me, like, I love seeing a horror movie and kind of putting the pieces together, especially like if there's a way to kill this monster, right? These are the steps, right? They go through the anthropologist, and basically was like, he gives a story about the witch doctor. And so they have a kind of a way to kind of kill the evil spirit, right? However, in order for this doctor to complete his immortality, he has to kill 5 of these kids. So my question is, how if for him to complete immortality by killing 5 kids, how is he able to still possess and live as an evil spirit within this girl, Kara?
DT, is this possibly another thread that wasn't wrapped up for the movie, so that you understand what's going on?
Yeah, for me, it didn't make any sense, because, the ending kind of gives this cheesy smile, like, I am now the monster, right? And I have all these plans that I'm not going to tell you. So for me, it kind of, insinuates, okay, cool, this is how he lives his immortality, through this girl, right? So my question is just if he didn't complete it,
and died.
Yes. And you don't even see the body burnt up all the way. Like, it just drops into, I don't know. It was just,
Go
ahead, Laura.
Right. No. It's messy. It's for sure messy. But the way that I hand wave it is that he did complete it. Like, he didn't complete it before he died, but with this possession and consuming Kara, it, even if she's not literally swallowed, but she has been consumed and taken. To me, it's like, well, okay, this didn't go exactly the way I thought it was going to. And did I really intend to live my life in a 10-year-old girl? No. But, I'm going to do a soft shuffle because in a way it worked, and we're just going to make all the rest of this a later problem. Maybe that wasn't plan A, but.
Well, it seemed like they were their attempt to possibly do another sequel, because technically he didn't complete his immortality.
But that's also that studio feeling note, right? Because it's like, well, hold on a second. If he can possess Deborah Logan and then he kills a kid to possess the kid, couldn't he just possess anyone before the kid, right? Like, he already had taken over someone.
We should ask the indigenous folks or the infirm, but we should ask the indigenous folks who they were randomly oh yeah, this evil ritual definitely belongs to some First Nation people. Don't ask us any questions. Bye. Right.
I also have issues with that little kid too. It's just randomly thrown in there, and you're supposed to care about this little kid. And I'm just I don't care about this little kid. What? I don't know.
Same.
I don't know.
I felt bad for the father. It's he was assured that his kid was okay. Yeah. And she gets kidnapped again. He's where?
Oh yeah. I mean, his 2 minutes of screen time were great. It's just, Joe, what do you have to say for yourself? Come.
Oh, I can't wait to hear Joe's rebuttal. We have to record something now.
I'm going to be in big trouble.
He can't leave us hanging on this.
I think.
Not at all.
So I'm assuming Joe loved the movie. I'm assuming. I'm
assuming Joe loved the movie too. I think Joe did. I think Joe liked the movie a lot. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what his full interpretation of the movie is or how much he enjoyed it. But I know he was definitely hot on watching Deborah Logan. And I felt bad because I made him watch Mortuary. So I was like, all right, well, yeah, we'll do Deborah Logan to, kind of bring you back in the loop and make you not so angry. And it didn't happen. So now I feel worse. But. Oh, well, whatever.
It's an
Yeah, we'll give him
enjoyable
his
movie,
rebuttal.
but
It is.
Yeah.
It's such an enjoyable. It's like it's a good group one.
Yeah. It's just missed some marks.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we are very snooty horror fans. Okay, so it takes a lot to impress us. Sort of, not really.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, but I love chopping mall.
Chopping mall.
No, but I got it. But no, it is true, and I feel like this has to be the disclaimer on any kind of podcast like this. It is a miracle when anything gets made. Props where props are due.
Yeah.
Like people work so hard.
100%.
It's I feel like for all the nitpicking and teasing and whatever, it truly is an accomplishment, even if you don't care for a movie that it got made. So respect where respect is due, of course.
Right.
And that's great that there's so much to nitpick. That's the other thing. You know what I mean? Like that's something of itself. Or it's just like,
and if it was completely irredeemable and stupid, like we wouldn't talk about it. You know what I mean? Like there's
exactly.
stuff in it worth talking about. And so for that, we say
right.
thank you, Deborah Logan.
So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to connect with us on socials, DT, Laura, did you want to throw out any tonight?
You could bust out a Ouija board and tell me why I'm wrong about this movie.
Yes,
DT?
you can follow me on Twitter at down2to_NFT. Down to NFT.
And you can follow Terrors of Tubi on all kinds of social media. If you're listening to us on Spotify, you can also find the animated cousin to this little episode on YouTube under Terrors of Tubi. We are also on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, I believe, under the handle Terrors of Tubi. Super simple, easy to find. And we will also include all of our research in the show notes to this episode. So if you want to dive even deeper into interviews with Adam Robitel or look into some stories that some of the actors and the crew had, we will definitely have those linked in there so you can, take a deep dive with us if you want. So have a good night, have a good day, enjoy your morning, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.